Welcome back to another episode of Guild Chatter. And today we're going to talk about classic Monster Hunter versus modern Monster Hunter. It's mainly my thoughts on it and why I kind of prefer 5th gen as it is current. And just so you know, I started with Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. Now, I knew about Monster Hunter way before that. I think the first time I saw Monster Hunter was when I saw Freedom on PSP. I was at some random game shop, local game shop I used to shop at. I saw one there. And at the time, I never owned a PSP, so shocker, I guess. I was more of a 3DS or DS kid, so yeah. My brother owned a PSP at the time, but yeah, I wasn't going to ask him for anything. But yeah, that was the first time I saw Monster Hunter, and I saw it was a Capcom game, which did interest me, but I quickly forgot about it. It wasn't until, 2013, when 3U was coming to the 3DS for the West, and that was my time to give it a shot. And I did. And I hated it at first. Like, I hated it. And I know I've told this story once before, but just to make it brief, eventually it clicked. And it was love from there. So, yeah, after that, I stuck with the series, and it's kind of became one of my favorite franchises of all time. Probably right underneath Shin Megami Tensei, you know? So, yeah. I love Monster Hunter, but it didn't start off that way, though. I'm pretty sure it's that way for most people who didn't start with World. So, the thing about World is, after coming from 3rd gen and 4th gen, 5th World was just... Let's talk about graphics, okay? So, imagine just dealing with what Monster Hunter used to look like for the longest time, and what essentially looked like a PS2 game up until World, which was fine with me because for a long time it was mainly on portable consoles, so it didn't matter. You know, there was no standard to set because the game still looked good for the hardware they were on. So then you fast forward to now. After it getting announced, after World was announced, like, I was kind of blown away by how good it looked. And then I remember when we had the beta, and I played it for the first time. Like, that's all I wanted to play. Like, I didn't even want to go back to play Generations, because at the time, we had Generations for 3DS, and I had already kind of had my fill with that game. You know, it was a high rank only game. I played it for maybe 400 hours, I think, or maybe 500. So by then I was kind of burnt out on it. And World just felt so much better to me. And even when we got the full game, yes, new generations usually feel pretty dry at first. That's how it is for most things in gaming, I guess. Even for consoles. Like a new generation of consoles kind of feels dry because there's not a lot of big releases out yet, and there usually isn't a big reason to have that new console yet. With Monster Hunter and even something like maybe Pokemon or something, games that handle the series by generation, new generations is kind of like a clean slate in a way. It's like a soft reboot, and the roster's kind of small, and then they update it from there. So I was fine with that, you know. It wasn't kind of like Try, where Try was just dry from the start, and it stayed that way. Like, just because the roster was so much smaller, you know, and there was no like real DLC adding new monsters to the game, you know, or adding returning monsters. We had to wait for 3U or 3G for that. So, but yeah, in terms of like classic versus, I guess, modern or new Monster Hunter, The reason why I don't prefer classic anymore is because of how clunky it feels in comparison to World. So now I played GU actually yesterday for about 3 hours, and I had a lot of fun actually. I had a lot of fun playing the game again. There are a lot of maps I missed that I wish would come back. Especially the tower area. Like I want that stuff back. But it's like after the 3 hour mark, I was kind of already burnt out and I just wanted to play World. Well, what I really wanted to play was Rise, but that's not out yet, so. Yeah, these games I can definitely go back to. It's not as if they're so unplayable that I can't go back to them. It's just that I prefer not to play the shit out of them anymore like I used to. I'm sure one day, you know, after like the dust has settled for how 5th gen is, then I'll go back and, you know, for nostalgia's sake, I'll go back and play those games for hours. Like, that's definitely not a problem for me, but, you know, World and Rise are like the now. And I'm the kind of person who likes to look forward instead of backwards, like, all the time, I guess. I like to focus on what's coming next rather than staying in the past, I guess. But, you know, I know people are different, and, you know, if they really like something and they don't like the changes that are happening, then that's fine. I mean, it's happened to me before, not too many times, but yeah, I know what it feels like. I mean, if I were to compare, I would say Pokemon. I mean, if I could stay with Gen 5, I would. Pokemon Gen 5 was the best for me. And then it just hasn't really been the same after that. So, I get the feeling. Like, I understand the sentiment for a lot of people. But personally, for me, for action games, gameplay first and foremost is what's important to me. And if the gameplay is vastly improved and it's so much more smoother, then it's already like a better experience for me. And World is honestly the best game in the series so far. You know, some people will call their favorite game the best game, and that's fine. But I mean, objectively, I would probably say that World is the best at what it does. In terms of like gameplay, combat, you know, there were certain things that I don't agree that World did or Iceborne did, but it's pretty small for me in comparison. And one, I'm not really a speedrunner. Like, I've dabbled my toes in speedrunning, but I'm not in any way like a speedrunner. Like, it's just not what I do regularly. So I don't really have that mentality. But I can definitely say that there are some monsters in this game, in World and Iceborne, that don't have a lot of openings like they used to, like Rajang. Rajang is too fast. He doesn't have many openings at all. You kind of just have to be super aggressive with Rajang. So, I get to stuff like that does bother me a bit, but it's like at the end of the day, I mean, I kind of don't care. Like, I adapt, you know. Adapting is not an issue for me. So, there's that too. So, yeah. Classic Monster Hunter, it's colorful. At least, like, since 4th gen, I think it's been pretty colorful. And, it had a better variation of maps. So, those are two things I'll give classic Monster Hunter. And it was more quirky. You know, World, I'm pretty sure Rise is kind of going back to that. World is really just a game that was developed with worldwide appeal in mind. So, you know, it didn't have that Japanese flair that the other games have. And it has it a little bit, but it mostly takes itself pretty seriously. Which is interesting. But it wasn't too much of a departure from what Monster Hunter is. It still had its quirky moments, you know, like the handler. Her entire character is meme, is a joke. You know, it's like stuff like that. It still works. So I think that they balanced it pretty well for World, but yeah, that's just my opinion on that subject. So if you have any thoughts or opinions, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to have a discussion about it. And eventually I'd love to stream and have some discussions about it. I guess the only thing that's stopping me from doing that is being afraid of streaming to myself. Like, imagine going live for like a Q&A session and only 3 people show up. It's like, that's what I'm afraid of, but I'm trying to wait until things grow a bit more, and then I'd love to do Q&A videos and Q&A streams and just chatting streams. You know, I'd love to do that, but yeah, that's it for today's guild chatter. Maybe the next one will be longer, but I just wanted this to be kind of brief, and I'm also kind of under the weather, but yeah. Take care, y'all.